Our reading for today is from Fred Castle, and he was a air raid warden, aged 46, and his story tells us of the Blitz. I had saved a bottle of whiskey for that day, a special treat to mark the conclusion of that terrible time. They called it VE Day, and as it dawned, the shattered and grubby streets of Whitechapel, London, seemed a little brighter, a little more hopeful. We had known that the end was coming, read the news of Germany's collapse and Hitler's death, cheered as our boys entered Berlin alongside the Americans. It was finally over. 6 years of pain and fear, darkness and death. Both my older sons were at war, so I had another reason to rejoice. They'd be home soon, safe and sound. I dressed and then woke my daughter, and we left the house early. I was a butcher by trade and needed to open. It was a national holiday, but Mr. Churchill had asked that shopkeepers open for a few hours. People would want supplies for their parties they had planned. Celebrations to mark the end of the war. Not that there was much to be had. Rationing was still in place, and even though a little more food was getting through, on VE Day all I had was left some beef. Well, not all. I hoarded some meat pies, truth be told, and our neighbours had banded together too. Whatever we could find in those unusual times, sugar and tea, lard and eggs, cobbled together from rations, even jelly. But don't ask me where they came from. I don't think people really understand how tough things were back then. You had to be there to know. Times were hard, and Whitechapel took a pounding from the Nazis. I know. I was an air raid warden as well as a butcher. I still hear the V1 rockets whining as they fell. Doodlebugs, we called them. They terrified some and made others furious. 3 nights a week I walked the streets of Whitechapel, calling out to those ignoring the blackout. It happened more than you would imagine, often by mistake, but sometimes through idiocy or drunkenness. "Put that light out," I'd often cry. "Cover that window," I'd sometimes yell. The damage was extensive at first. Homes and businesses burning, people left with nothing but the clothes in which they stood. Often after a night of destruction, I'd be tasked with searching the rubble or entering damaged houses carrying a pike, a long wooden pole that allowed me to prod the ceilings to ensure any loose sections didn't crush me. It was a dirty and dangerous job, but I didn't mind it. I was too old for the Second World War, having fought in the First. Being a warden was my duty, and I was proud to do my bit. We all were, no matter what we did. The war effort required it, and we did not complain. So VE Day was a time to celebrate. The war was on, our troops were coming home. The war was won, our troops were coming home, and peace had come home too. The street parties would be make-do affairs, just like everything else back then. We learned to survive, to make the best of what we had. Lemons and lemonade and all that. Not that you could find a lemon back then. My customers started queuing early. Neighbours and friends, regulars and strangers too. They waited without complaining, offered up their coupons and took away their share. There was joy in those voices, hope in those faces, and it made my heart sing. I imagined the shop full to the rafters again. No more rationing, no more shortages. Sausages and pies, and prime cuts of lamb and beef, rather than whatever was left over, and maybe some game birds too. I longed to be a proper butcher again, to put away my blue air raid warden's overall forever. To put away my blue air raid warden's overalls forever. I did not want to see another gas mask, nor search through rubble for poor innocents that might have survived a dreadful night of devastation. I had seen my share of death. It was inevitable. VE Day marked the end of that nightmare. Sunrise on a new day, a homecoming of all sorts, peace, life, happiness and normality. That morning, in my shop, people were smiling properly again and walked with a spring in their step. I saw relief. I saw optimism returned. Everything seemed airier and lighter, and the colours brighter. The street party was a sight to behold. We set up trestle tables, and my neighbours found bunting, Union Jack flags, and even a rare balloon or two. We had endless fruit cake and jelly, whatever tea we could find, and my meat pies were very welcome and scoffed quickly. We made beef dripping or corned beef sandwiches and Lord Woolton pies from any vegetables we could find. The local pub ran dry of beer well before 10:30 p.m. curfew, and a parade of sozzled folks sang songs and told jokes as the children played all around us. A sudden bang, and then another. I jumped out of my seat, panicked and concerned. My wife's hand caught my arm. "Calm down, Fred. It's just fireworks, you daft old man." The crowds around us roared with approval, and my panic subsided. Fireworks, of course. What else would it be? My wife smiled and offered me some fruitcake. Better get home. We did our share of tidying up, said goodnight to our neighbours, and headed indoors. My daughter was still excited and loud, but we soon packed her off to bed, and once there she fell right asleep. Finally, I sat and cracked open my special whisky, poured a large measure and took in the aroma before savouring the taste. I sat back and closed my eyes for a moment. For the first time in years, I was truly at peace. No air raids, no burning houses, no distraught and destitute families, just a sense of calm, sense of home returning.